Now we have to focus on the nadir of Australian cinema, the encapsulation of everything that was wrong with the 1970s Ozploitation ring. Now, while the 70s is considered a strong era in Australia's film history, we have to distinguish the refined grace of the Australian New Wave, presupposed by Tim Burstall's 1968 feature 10,000 Weeks, and the sleazy sex romp laziness, mostly I'd suggest, of the Ozploitation bracket, presupposed by Tim Burstall's 1971 feature, Stalk. I don't even know if The Journalist is meant to be stock Ozploitation or a failed attempt at new wave nihilism, possibly both. Co-writer and director Michael Thornhill has disowned the film and put himself as responsible for its particularly tepid quality. The Journalist is considered one of the worst Australian films of all time. It is popularly known here as a bloody awful movie, and for good reason. Jack Thompson stars as a promiscuous journalist struggling to maintain a relationship with his ex-wife and daughter whilst being unfaithful to his current girlfriend. A possibly interesting premise about an aging wild larrikin is rendered laughable. Is this meant to be a goofy, naughty sex romp for the boys to leer at, or a serious depiction of decaying masculinity? I don't even think it knew which. Sam Neill co-stars as Thompson's character's co-worker and friend. It has been proposed in hindsight that Sam Neill starring in this film could have made for a much more interesting film. Sam Neill could have portrayed a reptilian, slimy playboy journalist, Thompson as his older, pathetic, giddy associate, panting for some scraps. Forgive that gross image, although we are in the gutter when we're talking about the bloody journalist. An attempt at an ode to the Australian male, in a respect, perhaps the opposite of 1971's Wake in Fright, also featuring Mr. Thompson. Who knows, all I know is that the journalist really seems to expose those rubbish sex romp escapades for what they are, functional pornography. These pretensions about these films being real or even subversive depictions of human sexuality are so evidently forced and pseudo-intellectual takes on the subject. Sex has no currency against the establishment powers that be, it is just another commodity, bought and sold. Its value as a seemingly rebellious or an artistically authentic mode of expression is non-existent in the 21st century, and in hindsight, it was just illusory in the 70s. No one pretends that any performer in a Jesus Franco film was any more empowered or revolutionary than poor Linda Lovelace. So while these Australian films may have claimed to these European, vaguely bourgeois pretensions about this real or subversive art, it just comes across now as male power fantasy claptrap. Still, a fascinating cultural artifact. I almost think any Australian owes it to themselves to watch The Journalist at least once, witness what, at one time, was considered an Australian film, and the worst of Australian films. This is a time wherein the world took place outside one's mind, and outside in general, not within cyberspace, and Australia was a unique country in the world, not one entity with its own pros or cons amongst a global village. It was a place, not a space. Do tread carefully if and when exploring The Journalist. Expect a window into Australia's past, a slice of a peculiar history, a lost time, one less stressful, more comforting, when we didn't have to worry about social media, the end of the world, worrying about this and that, the other, and or not doing what we feel like. The Journalist may remind one of those things, but is also a film with the reputation it has, and as you'll see if you view it, really rightfully so.